This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
I don't know about where you all live, but judging by the fact that I'm indoors and sweating a little, I can say that where I am, we're officially coming into the summer season. Whenever I think of the summer, I think ocean, and whenever I think of the ocean, I first of all think of all the things down in there that could be in there that scare me, but second of all, I think pirates. Pirates just really never cease to be a muse for me. I mean, it's the jackets, it's the assortment of neck accessories, it's the, egregious amount of unnecessary belts. Don't worry, I am dressed on theme today for that. And since birds have been suggested as a prompt so many times for these character design episodes that I frankly just don't know why I haven't done it yet, I thought, what better a pair to wed together in theoretical pilfering matrimony than birds and pirates? So the birds I'm going to be turning into marine criminals today are the rainbow lorikeet, the golden pheasant, the cockatiel, the Atlantic puffin,
and the Mexican muleteer, which is a subspecies of hummingbird.
So in terms of my Pinterest boards for the visuals of the characters, we are not breaking too much from tradition here. I basically pinned a bunch of piratey looking outfits and silhouettes to use as inspiration, along with a bunch of really cool character designs that kind of fit the vibe that I'm going for. And then I also did, as I've been doing, little breakdowns of the silhouettes and colors and shapes of each bird to give me aesthetic and personality inspiration for each of the characters going forward. I am very much going for a traditional piratey aesthetic, something that matches the other pirate characters that I've done in the past, but obviously I am leaning in a little bit more of an avian direction this time, so more feathers, more cloaks and capes, big silhouettes, and of course lots and lots of colors. The little story prompt I decided to go alongside this is pretty straightforward this time. It is just a group of pirates, each specializing in their own niche skill set, collide on the hunt for the same mythical treasure. And just to make that treasure funnier and more appropriate for bird, let's call it the golden egg. Stupid. So in a surprising turn of character development, I've actually started doing a ton of planning at the beginning of these videos, so I'm gonna whip out my sketchbook and my iPad, and we are going to start off with some thumbnails.
So to begin conceptualizing, I started out by, of course, doing a bunch of doodles in my sketchbook to start feeling out the type of character, their silhouette, some personality expression through their clothing and styling and that sort of thing. And of course, playing around with face shape and structure, because that's something that I find really helps me to start nailing down a character type. Here I also take the opportunity to do a lot more variation and play around with different ideas and shapes and start to actually iterate in these design videos a little bit. I don't do a ton of iteration with these character designs because iteration takes a long time, and if I'm doing this in a week, that's not something that I necessarily have. But doing super quick doodles like this does allow me to iterate while not having to worry about it looking nice. These are purely just to get ideas out and experiment a little bit. From here, as always, I switched over to my iPad so that I can do some thumbnails and silhouettes using color to start nailing down a good color palette. This is especially useful whenever I'm dealing with so many colorful inspiration birds, because I do like my character groups to look nice together, and when you're dealing with every color in the rainbow, that can be difficult to balance. I also got a little lazy this week and didn't do faces on the thumbnails this time. That's fine though, because I think the character art itself turned out looking really nice anyways.
Before we get into the thick of it, if you're an artist with a giant body of work, and so many of the social media platforms don't even want you to post in a traditional image format anymore, I think you need a portfolio, and you could build one in no time with this video's sponsor, Squarespace. To get started with Squarespace, you can choose from dozens of professionally designed flexible website templates that you can customize to perfectly fit your aesthetic with custom text, colors, and their drag and drop website builder fluid engine. From there, making your main portfolio page is as simple as uploading your pieces, and automatic image scaling will arrange your gallery for you. This is so useful to me because I don't feel like doing that. But if you want things even more hands-off, you can use Squarespace's new Blueprint AI system to build your website for you. Blueprint AI can generate your desired website pages, brand aesthetic, and flavor your written descriptions with a tone that perfectly fits your brand, all with professionally curated layouts, styling options optimized for every device, and integrated SEO tools to help you to begin showing up right away to the people who are searching for your kind of work. And since most artists also have a horde of devoted gremlins who want stickers and prints and merch, Squarespace also has an e-commerce e-commerce platform where you can host an online store that includes all the tools you need to sell your products if you make them yourself, or you can use custom merch through a print-on-demand service that will handle inventory, production, and shipping for you. And to make things even more accommodating for your customers, they now have new flexible payment options including credit cards, Apple Pay, and PayPal, and they now have the option to buy now and pay later with ClearPay and Afterpay in eligible countries. So if you want to create your own website or portfolio where viewers can actually see the entire piece of art and in good quality, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/PricklyAlpaca to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace as always for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it.
So first up out of the designs, we have the cockatiel, and this design by far came the easiest to me because I think this was the bird that kind of inspired me to do this video in the first place. Whenever I was like perusing Pinterest one day, I think I just got a very clear image of what kind of character this would be in my head, and then of course I had to compulsively draw it. The other contributor to the energy of this design, I think, was that I actually have met a cockatiel in person. I've pet sat for one in the past, and it was an absolute delight. Cutting up vegetables into tiny little pieces and then feeding them to a cockatiel is a great addition to any morning routine. So this is partially inspired by a little fella named Sam. So obviously I definitely had to make this character design a little guy as well, and the general archetype that I started out with was just like your classic shonen anime protagonist. This is definitely inspired by your Dekus, your Tanjiros, your Luffys, just your most wholesome, positive boys who have absolutely no business getting into piracy in the first place, but do so because they have a thirst for adventure and, I don't know, they have to prove they're the best at something for some reason. I feel like the backstory of this character would be leaning intentionally into the cliche a little bit, like maybe he had a grandfather or some kind of somewhat close but distant relative who was previously involved in piracy, who was also chasing this alleged golden egg, and maybe this relative never found egg, but they left a clue for posterity to maybe go and find egg in the future. And this character, who I'm calling Oliver, or Ollie for short because it's just very cute, gets it in his head that it's like his destiny and legacy to go and like become a pirate like his dead relative and like seek out this treasure, you know, just anime boy things. This character would also probably come from a family who's struggling a little bit financially, so in his head he's like, if I find the egg I can, you know, provide for my family and give them riches and wealth. So he thinks that it's a very altruistic motivation for him to find egg, but a lot of his motivation is probably just fame and notoriety and that sort of thing. And clashing motivations for finding this particular treasure is going to be a theme throughout the characters, so later on as we get into it, you'll see each character has a unique motivation for wanting to find the golden egg. So of course, in plucky protagonist fashion, you can't simply go off on an adventure without dragging your best friend into things. So our little cockatiel boy definitely doesn't do this alone. He drags his best friend with him, who you'll see in the next section is the Mexican violeteer, who I'm calling Ignacio, or Iggy for short. Is that because I'm still on a Better Call Saul kick? Well, I don't want to speak on the matter, but the premise of this adventure would definitely be Ollie finding this clue and then roping his friend into it and being like, we have to pursue this. This is the coolest thing we'll ever do with our entire lives. And Iggy is nervous and reluctant because he's a little hummingbird boy, but Iggy's mom is like, you have to go after this kid and watch after him and kind of protect him from himself. So he does because he's a good friend. And Iggy also has his own selfish motivation for wanting to find the golden egg. Take a shot of water every time I say the word egg in this video. Anyways, in terms of personality, Oliver is very positive and friendly and confident and determined, perhaps friendly to a dangerous amount. He's definitely a little bit naive. He does not plan well, very impulsive, and obviously has a certain level of delusion to him. And something that doesn't help his level of delusion is that I think he has a bit of a lucky streak to him. I wanted to give Ollie and Iggy this sort of cat and dog dynamic to them, and along with that, kind of a good luck bad luck dynamic, so they even each other out. They're very foily and complementary to each other, which I absolutely love in a character trope. So because of that, Ollie just has a lot of unearned confidence by just falling ass backwards into good situations and good outcomes somehow. Because of this, he definitely has a skill delusion and a destiny delusion, and it doesn't help how much the luck actually pans out, but it would definitely run out like eventually. But not before every ounce of comedic value is milked from it. Regardless of how much this character is just lucky, he does have tangible skills. He's sort of like a bushcraft master. He's very good at survival and tracking and that sort of thing. Cockatiels are native to Australia, so I figured that sort of bushcraft theme would be a good skill set for him. Of course, this is like maybe not so useful whenever you're at sea. That little tidbit will circle back with later character design, but for Ollie's design itself, I really wanted to lean into the adventurer side of the pirate aesthetic, since that's sort of where his character archetype lies. For both his character design and Iggy's that you'll see later, I really wanted the energy to give off, I have never seen a pirate before, I'm strictly guessing at what kind of fashion they may wear, and second of all, I raided my mom's closet to find half of the things that I'm wearing on my body. Like, they really don't know what they're doing in terms of the fashion, and if this were a story that existed, they would look more and more piratey the more they learn the ways of the world and gain skills within the world. So for these two, no pirate jackets, no hats to start off with. Those are markers of actual pirates, which these little guys are not yet. So for Ollie's base outfit, even though he's sort of incompetent with the actual fashion, I wanted to show a certain level of preparedness. So he's very much dressed in layers and dressed in a way where he would have clothing for different climates and situations. As a base for the outfit, I gave him little yellow fur-trimmed coveralls that are long-sleeved and have long pants as well. So again, he's ready for different environments, but he has a little tank top undershirt so he can take off the long sleeve part whenever it's hot out and sort of drape it around his waist, and he can also roll up the pants into shorts whenever it's warm out. So he's done that, but in kind of a sloppy way and only on one leg. I also did this so that the torso part of the coveralls can kind of drape behind him and look a little bit like a cockatiel tail. I have paired this with some very unsensible fuzzy boots, probably just something he had lying around, but I think they look kind of fun with the outfit. And whenever I was first visualizing this character, for some reason I just needed him in a puffer vest. It just made sense to me. I of course also gave him a giant yellow fluffy hood to mimic the way cockatiels look whenever they get all puffed up, and I also gave him a little shaggy slick back anime boy haircut to mimic a cockatiel's little mohawk. Finally, I also gave him little cockatiel cutie marks because cockatiels are just a Pikachu whenever you really think about it. But since that orange is such a nice vibrant part of a cockatiel's look, I spread it other places in the design with some little pops of color, like bandanas kind of just tied around him. You know, you never know when you're gonna need to tie off a wound, so having extra bandanas is good sense. I also accessorized with some little navigational tools like a telescope and a compass. And finally, for weapons, I gave him some little sharp talon claws, and I think the backstory behind these are he stole them whenever he somehow lucked into winning his first battle against a real pirate. So now he thinks that he's a brawler and can fight, even though he can't. He has a long way to go. Even though this weapon at this point doesn't suit him at all, I feel like it would be a good on-brand choice for a character like this to grow into eventually and sort of learn how to use. So next up we have the Mexican violetaire Hummingbird, which I definitely mispronounced in the previous section. Sorry about that. It's like 3 a.m. right now. Bear with me if I misspeak or say any words wrong. So unlike the cockatiel, I definitely had a difficult time working with this character and designing him, just because I feel like hummingbirds are all of the shape language. There's a lot of colors going on, and I was just struggling to come up with like a character design and silhouette and build that I thought worked well for the sort of image I had in my mind for the character dynamics and also for this hummingbird. What I came up with visually for this character is definitely different than what I had in my mind that I was trying to go for. I still think it ended up looking pretty good as a character design, but I I think I could definitely tweak it a little bit further to make it fit better with Ollie's character design and just an overall more pirate-forward type of look. That's why the built-in excuse of they built their outfits by raiding their mom's closet is helpful, because it would explain some of the design decisions that I made that I don't particularly like. That being said, I think it would be a fun character choice to have them looking just a little off, a little out of place in their initial designs. So like I said in the previous section, Ignacio or Iggy is very much a character foil for Oliver, and vice versa, Oliver is for Iggy as well. So they have a lot of contrasting character traits. I very much want Iggy's whole demeanor to take after a hummingbird, so he has sort of nervous, hyperactive energy, but to play into his more cat-like personality, it's more of a controlled chaos than with Ollie. He has a speed and agility and a talent for evasion that has precision to it. Whenever I've seen hummingbirds fly, they kind of seem like they're all over the place, kind of chaotic, but there is a certain amount of precision and exactness to their movements that I think cats also share to a certain extent whenever they fall from a ridiculous height and then still land on their feet. So to play into his sort of unlucky theme, I think this character would be a little bit accident prone, but in a graceful way where he can still recover from it a little bit. Kind of like the way a cat can recover from a dumb decision they made out of curiosity. So that natural curiosity that he has is definitely something he shares with Ollie. That's one of their bonding things and something that would drive them to go on this adventure together. So in terms of personality, I think Iggy would be a little bit nervous and awkward, quieter than Oliver, but someone who's still very witty and sarcastic. Like, he chooses his words a little bit more and is less impulsive with what he says. Like, the humor divide would definitely be Iggy with witty retorts and Ollie with unintentional physical comedy. So all of these things kind of play into Iggy's main goal and motivation for being involved in this in the first place, and that's that he has a great dream of becoming like a really good swordsman, and he doesn't think he'll ever learn enough if he just stays in his little childhood village. He wants to travel the world and learn all that he can, just other protagonist things. And all of the personality traits and physicality that I've just mentioned give him a pretty good natural talent for swordplay and stealth, which are his main contributing abilities to the group. So the way I imagine all of these characters eventually colliding is that there's scattered clues to finding the alleged golden egg, and each of them end up eventually stumbling upon a clue which eventually lead them to each other whenever they're trying to find the last few clues. So of course, Ollie finds their first clue from his deceased relative, but I think that Iggy would be a big part in them stumbling upon the second clue that would end up leading them to the other characters. This would be a nice little confidence boost for him because he's felt very unlucky for most of his life, especially by comparison to his friend Ollie. And it would be a nice little test of his skills because I think each character would find their corresponding clue, because the clue is hidden in such a way where it requires their specific skill set to find it. So maybe this one is hidden in a place that requires a lot of sneaking around enemies and climbing and a very physical location that's difficult to get to, but Iggy is just agile enough to actually get to it. He's also small enough to get to it, and this is sort of something that didn't end up coming across well enough in my art. It's something that I would change about this character in the future, but I think that he would be giving off some major short king energy. It's something that he's a little insecure about, but it is also something that allows him to get into tight spaces and like crawl through caves and things and find treasure in places where other people are too big and can't get to it. So leading me right into the design itself, I chose this bird because the color palette is incredibly striking. I love anything that has like color shifting qualities to it or iridescence, but for this character, balancing the colors and translating them into more of a pirate outfit was definitely a challenge. And like I said, I don't know how piratey the end outfit comes across, but I think it does kind of work as this character's best guess. So since I wanted to kind of separate the hummingbird by blocks of color and somehow translate that into regions of of an outfit, I included a lot of layers in this look. He's got kind of a base undershirt and base poofy pants with sort of an overshirt and overskirt on top to try to mimic the wing shape and tail shape of the hummingbird. I colored these with a lot of tiered blocks of color because these sort of woven tiers are something that you see a lot in like traditional Mexican textiles. So even though this is very much Fantasyland, it's something that I kind of wanted to reference visually a little bit. I wanted to keep the patterns within those tiers relatively abstract so that I didn't make it too visually cluttered, but I did make them a little bit wing-shaped just to once again reference bird. I accessorized the outfit with some bracers, a scarf tied around his neck, and a little waist belt to make the look a little bit more piratey. And the waist belt also has some embroidery on it because floral embroidery motifs are something that I also saw a lot of in traditional Mexican textiles. I also did more of a ref sheet type format for these character designs than I normally do, so I have some details on some things that he would have around his waist. I've got a little floral shaped bag that maybe his mom packed some snacks for him in. He's got a little lockpick set for stealthy roguish things, and then I also gave him a little glass container of sugar cubes because since he's a hummingbird, I think he would be a little sugar obsessed and want to suck on sugar cubes all day. For footwear, I gave him sandals just to switch it up a little bit, and I also kind of feel like with the sandals and the overall silhouette, it also has a samurai vibe to it, which I think is relatively on brand because first of all, anime, and second of all, he's a little swordsman guy, so I like to think that it plays into his overall theme a little bit. I struggled with this character's hairstyle a lot because I wanted to make it interesting but still different from the cockatiels and also play into the shapes and everything, and it's just way easier whenever a bird kind of looks like they have hair on their head, but hummingbirds don't necessarily. So I kind of gave him half up, half down, shoulder length hair, and the one interesting choice that I made was, I don't know exactly why this is, I tried to look it up and couldn't find the information, but sometimes in the photos I see these hummingbirds puffing out their purple little cheek feathers a little bit. So to kind of mimic that, I gave him some gnarly purple mutton chops, which is definitely a vibe, like early Fall Out Boy Patrick Stump called. He wants his mutton chops back. I think questionable facial hair is a fun character choice for a preteen boy because it just is a phase you have to go through for your life, and if nothing else, it's something that this character can shave off later as a visual mark of character development. Anyways, finally, of course, this character is a swordsman, so I had to give him a really cool sword, and by golly I did. He's got a kind of cutlass slash saber style sword. Once again, this is Fantasyland, so I'm not being too definitive with it, but I did give it a very cool hummingbird shaped hilt. I feel like this is definitely something passed down through generations of his family, and now he's like, I gotta do right by this super cool sword. I have been talking about this character for way too long, but I think that also plays into his motivation for wanting to find egg. Like, if it isn't obvious already, this character is a little bit Sokka inspired, so I feel like he kind of wants the egg for material. Like, how cool would a family sword be with like mythical golden egg embellishment and inlay and something, I don't know. Maybe there's a legend that forging a sword from the treasure makes a mythical sword or something, I don't know. Insert dumb anime thing here. Finally, I really need to stop talking about this character, but I also gave him little goggles because he's kind of fast. He's a little speedster inspired in some ways, and sometimes bugs fly in your eyes, maybe. I don't know, he's not that fast, but it's just a fun accessory because why not? Next up, we have the Atlantic Puffin, and I really need to pick up my pace. I'm sorry that I keep talking about these characters for 10 minutes, but I had a thought process this week, okay? So anyways, I had a lot of fun working on this one because the shapes are shaping and Atlantic Puffins are so very cute. So I actually came up with an idea for this character relatively quickly. So this would be the last character in the main little young character trio. I don't know what it is, but I really like building group dynamics of characters and odd numbers. It just plays well together. So this would kind of be the third character that they meet and the character that rounds out the main little crew. She's also the character that has the third clue, and they kind of need all the clues together to get to the next couple of steps. So this is a collect the next crew member type of story that doesn't exist. Fun. So my idea for this character is that she's a little bit more experienced in the world of piracy than the two boys are. She's at most 1 or 2 years older than them, but she has been spending the last couple of years traveling and studying the seas because she is a diligent student of marine biology, but like fantasy, old-timey marine biology where you really don't know what's down there in that ocean, and it could be almost anything. So this character is a little bit obsessed with finding and classifying different sea monsters, and that's kind of what pulls her into the main plot, because scientists believe and explain this whole golden egg thing as the egg of some sea monster or undersea kaiju that they want to find and study. So that's why she wants to find it, and her particular skill set leads her to the third clue, because she is not only a devout marine biologist, but she is also a very skilled swimmer and about as close as you can get to a scuba diver as you could in this particular like fantasy universe. So I like to think that she found the third clue because it was hidden underwater in some kind of cove or a sunken ship or something along those lines. So I feel like these characters would kind of run into each other whenever they're looking for each other's clues and sort of collide and have an initial conflict, but ultimately end up deciding to work together because their skills can be valuable to each other. Because Iggy's like the muscle in the fighting skill. Ollie is sort of the big picture leader guy by default because he knows the most about this whole legend and where to go about finding the clues, and he also has the first clue. And the Atlantic Puffin character, who I am tentatively calling Dahlia based purely on having the nickname Dolly so that it can be Iggy, Ollie, and Dolly. It's stupid. She has actual seafaring and navigational skills and has been charting maps this entire time, so she can actually guide them on the ocean a lot better than Ollie can. In terms of personality, she is of course very smart, self-assured, and confident, and very focused. Of course, her utmost interest is in like research and study and discovery, but she also has that sense of adventure and natural curiosity that the other two have, and that's a trait that kind of bonds the three of them together. I think she would be very pragmatic and organized, but maybe also a little obsessive. Like, someone definitely needs to make sure she puts a book down once in a while so that she can like feed herself. That kind of obsessive. As the oldest, I think she would also naturally look out for the other two, so simultaneously she can probably get a little bit bossy from time to time. So while this character is very skilled and resourceful in many ways, I don't think she would be particularly good in a fight. That's not where her focus gravitates. She has good instincts, but I think she would try to avoid getting into any fights in the first place. So over her years of travel, I think it would be kind of fun if, to avoid fights, she kind of cleverly built up a bit of a reputation for herself, like maybe spun fake stories about things that she had done or taken credit for things that other pirates did, and eventually kind of became a name that people feared. And it'd be kind of funny if these stories were slowly revealed to the other two and they're like, oh my god, Dahlia, did you do all that? And she's like, no, I didn't. I just didn't want to have to fight anybody. So moving on to the design itself, if this character did have to fight, I kind of gave her a gnarly weapon to fight with if she absolutely had to. And that's because as a marine biologist, I think she would be an excellent fisher person and be really good at catching food for the group and everything. So I gave her this like wild fish hook looking weapon that she would use to hook giant beasties under the sea and catch them and potentially roast them up. And that idea of an expert swimmer and fisher person and overall like seafaring expert definitely creeped its way into the rest of her character design. Atlantic puffins are really good swimmers and water birds and always eating fish and that sort of thing, so I definitely wanted to give her outfit something that could be practical in and out of the water. I'm a very shape-based designer. Whenever I'm looking at my inspiration, I definitely take cues from like their markings and stuff like that for clothing shapes, and just the way the markings are around the face and head of the Atlantic puffin, it reminded me both of like the head part of a scuba suit and also of different modesty-based hair coverings. So that's kind of the direction that I went in for this character. So the main component of this outfit is kind of a cloak inspired by the wings of an Atlantic puffin that also covers the head and kind of drapes across the chest in the same way that the markings on the puffin do. I once again went for a lot of piratey layers and some poofy pants. She's got a nice little vest that goes over a bit of a skirt portion that has some fish motifs on it because, again, least you forget, she is a marine biologist. I, of course, made those layers white because, you know, white chest of an Atlantic puffin, but I also kind of like the very subtle hints of white lab coat that they give off. I finished off the look with a little satchel bag on her hip to house, you know, some periodicals that she would need. I gave her a little fish coin purse just because I thought it was cute. And then maybe questionable decision, I don't know how I feel about it, but I was trying to be practical once again. I gave her some kind of like puffin feet inspired rain boot things that kind of have flippers on the front to potentially help her swim underwater. Once again, I was trying to make this look very water ready, kind of a fusion between fantasy scuba gear, modest swimwear, and pirate clothing somehow. I don't know. Finally, I accessorized the look with a little scarf around her neck just for a little pop of color, and I also gave her some little reading glasses because once again, I kind of think they're cute and also just it's part of the whole nerdy look. And then last but not least, because this girl has been a pirate, sort of, for a certain length of time, I also gave her an optional tricorn hat because, as we've established, hats are a mark of an actual pirate. I like to think that she'll pop on the hat to kind of step into that persona whenever she's trying to like roll for intimidation. And any kind of visual medium, it would be a fun gag to be like, oh, she's wearing the hat, y'all better tread lightly, she's wearing the hat. Next up we have the Rainbow Lauret, and he's the first serious adult pirate to stumble across one of the clues. That's right, 3 teenagers beat you to it, bud. So I wanted to go in a very traditional, notable pirate direction for this character, but of course, whenever I was reading a little bit about Rainbow Lorikeets and I read that they're very monogamous and mate for life, I was like, you know what, that's it. I gotta make a dad. So this is the type of character that I like to think was a real rapscallion in his youth, like a really infamous pirate who has since settled down and kind of had a family and entered like the dad years of his life, and he's very like confident and heroic and still very much projects like the squash-buckling roguishness of his youth, but under the surface he is very much just a stressed dad. But despite being in this kind of dad era of his life, I like to think that there's a certain division of pirates that are a little bit more organized and sort of live together in more of a community, and he is kind of a leader within this community of pirates, you know, just free seafaring folk who steal from other people who are unfortunate enough to cross their path. So definitely a leader, provider figure, but in that like Robin Hood kind of way, you know? So this is kind of a silly way to integrate him into this greater world, but I kind of like it because of how mundane it is. Like a mundane thing could lead him to the clue. So hear me out. One thing about a good dad is they're gonna be making some exquisite fruit snacks for their young. So I like to think that this character is very much a cooking dad, and specifically like a fruit salad type of cooking dad, and he's like the full 9 yards. He's gonna be making like rosettes out of the strawberries and stars out of the oranges, but on a particular day he really wanted to find a particular kind of rare fruit, and journeying to an isolated area of jungle on an island to find a rare fruit is what led him to the 4th clue. And I think it would be really fun if this is not the first time he's even tried looking for this treasure. He probably spent years looking for it in his youth before he settled down a little bit, and he's like, of course. The second I'm not looking for it is when I finally find it, and this is sort of like causing a conflict in him, because now he's like, I kind of want to get back in the game. I kind of want to go out looking for this treasure and fulfill this younger goal of mine. One of my favorite stupid tropes is also like, we gotta get the gang back together for one final job. Like, I'm sorry, it just has so much fun midlife crisis energy. So it'd be great if he was like, oh, I'm gonna get the boys back together, we're gonna go out and try to find this treasure again, and then he's gotta like convince his wife, and she's like, listen, go, I support you in this, but this is the last time, I swear. I think the Lorikeet's motivation for finding the treasure would be mostly political, to try to leverage it to like gain more power within his community, because I think other people within the community might be like, we're younger, we're more actively engaged in the world of piracy, and he would be like, no, I might be more stationary, but I am still on top of my game. And then also obviously use it for financial gain and that sort of thing. So in terms of personality, I think he would be very extroverted and positive and jovial, very expressive, very charismatic, but he would also of course have that quiet artistic side where he cares about making like his little fruit displays and desserts and that sort of thing. I don't know, he's a baker. We get it, you bake. Since he is tall and strong and big, I think he would also be a very tanky sort of fighter, hence me giving him the giant sword. He would definitely be the too many weapons, too many knives character, where it's like if you were to unarm yourself completely, it would take entirely too long and you would have just little knives all over the place. But that would also be because of the variety of tools and knives that you would need to intricately carve fruits. Is this character beat just because I took a stupid random fruit carving class in college? Yeah, man. Despite all of his positive qualities, I think he would be getting a little impatient and weary and a little bit more tired than he used to get. He can get a little short with people, he can raise his voice from time to time, but you know, leadership and parenting are exhausting. It is what it is. Thankfully, this midlife crisis pirate trip will be a good break from the stressors of everyday life, right? Little does he know he's not actually getting a break from the kids at all, because it's a bunch of kids that found the first couple of clues and now he feels responsible for them and he's like, really? This? The Lauret would definitely be the character that Ollie looks up to and like the image of a legendary pirate that he wants to aspire to be one day. He's definitely like the role model for him. The Lauret would also be a bit of a swordsman mentor for Iggy, and I think he and Dahlia would bond over their joint love of cooking. Getting into the visual design of Lauret, this is definitely one that I struggled with a lot because rainbow color palettes are not necessarily my forte. I just kind of dealt with one of these and I tried to do better with it this time. I think it did go a little bit better, but I struggled nonetheless. So whenever I was first working on this, I knew that the base of this outfit was definitely going to be some kind of Lauret inspired giant cloak. With him being kind of the most notable pirate character out of all of them, I wanted him to have a certain like regal energy about him, and I thought that a big old cloak with big old wing sleeves and that sort of thing would give him that presence. I think the design of the cloak was pretty solid and one-to-one, but the part that I struggled with more was kind of accessorizing it with the rest of the outfit, and I think this is kind of where it falls short a little bit. Since he's a more experienced pirate, has definitely plundered and gotten riches, I wanted his accessories and materials to be more expensive, made out of more solid materials, so I kind of wanted to lean into armor for some of it. I wanted to give him some nice embellishment in a couple of areas without making it too busy and overall make the look expensive, and I'm not sure how successful I was, but I kind of went with a little feather patterned breastplate under the main look with some lighter feather armor kind of draped around his waist with pirate sash around that with some belts. I gave him some puffy pants, some pirate boots with a texture that I was trying to loosely match to the feet of an actual rainbow Lauret, and of course a notable pirate guy has to have a notably large pirate hat with its own set of feathers, so big hat with some jewels on it, big feathers. Finally, a huge area of struggle for me for this character was what kind of hair to give him, because the rainbow Lauret is another character that just doesn't have bird hair. It's so much more helpful whenever they just have bird hair, but anyways, I wanted to give him a lot of hair because it just feels like a flex to me, so I ended up going for these big old floofy locks that are very loosely inspired by the shape of the feathers, and of course I made his hair blue simply because the head of a rainbow Lauret is mostly blue. Overall, I think I like this design. I mean, I look at it and I'm like, that's a lot, but then I look at a rainbow Lauret and they are an awful lot too, so I don't know. If nothing else, he definitely looks like the bird. Finally, last but not least, we have the golden pheasant, also known as the Chinese pheasant, and she is the only other source of adult supervision for this group. Someone please send assistance. Also, if you haven't noticed by now, because I know someone's gonna comment, Yes, I am aware that the males of the species are usually the more colorful ones. I don't care. I'm not going by gender for these. I'm just picking a pretty bird to use as inspiration. I don't care how it corresponds to the gender of the character that I make. Anyways, my concept for this character, because the other pirate adults that we have within this little group is a little bit more nice, a little bit more hero coded, I wanted to make a character to balance him out, to be a little bit more villainous, maybe a little bit more of an anti-hero. Basically what I'm describing to you is just a real actual pirate. She's a pirate. She's gonna take your stuff. My idea for this character is that she's also kind of a pirate from back in the day, and she's maybe retired at this point. Like, she has made her money and she's got her ship. Like, she wants for absolutely nothing except for the one treasure that got away. That's right, this one final job plagues her too, and she is gonna drag herself out of retirement to go find that golden egg. She's definitely a big old rival for the Lauret character. They've bested each other in battle and racing each other to treasure many times in the past, and there's a definite spirit of competition for who can get to this treasure first. There's old scores to settle here. So the golden pheasant's motivation for looking for this treasure is just purely for aesthetic reasons. It's for treasure. It's just to have it. I think her whole lifelong pursuit and purpose in the life of piracy is literally just to experience as much art and food and culture as she possibly can in her entire life, and amass as much, collection of those things as she possibly can. That's kind of the atmosphere that would be on her ship, especially post-retirement. I think she would just constantly be entertaining her friends and the people who she likes on her ship, and just wine and music is always flowing, and there's just art everywhere, and she is the wine aunt who likes to paint watercolors of still lifes that don't make any sense. In terms of personality, I think she would obviously be very pretentious and have a certain amount of snobbery about her. She would have a certain dignity as well, a very pointed way of speaking, but also possess a very real love and passion for arts of all kinds, and that's where she finds a certain amount of respect for other people, even though she is like a little full of it. She will really respect someone who is a master of their craft and really like works on themselves to perfect their art. Like, that's her thing. I feel like she can agree with Lauret on exactly two things, and that is a good vintage of wine and a well-crafted sword. There is nothing else in which they agree on. But I do think she would eventually develop an undisclosed soft spot for all of the kids in their own way, because she does admire the passion that they have for their like little respective goals. Passion and drive are some of the few things that she really like values in a person, so she would definitely foster those qualities in the children, even though she will take the egg for herself at the very first opportunity. I feel like out of all the characters, Dahlia is the one that she would be the most likely to develop any kind of closeness with. I could see these two like playing chess against each other and kind of having these little mental battles that they both enjoy, because they're both kind of the brainy characters. I think it is a bit of a secret and something that she would feel guilty about, but I think Dahlia also does have some potential to just take the treasure for herself at the end of the day, because she's just that obsessive and just that science driven. So she and the golden pheasant will both have that little thing in common of like, if it came down to it, you know that you would just take it for yourself. You wouldn't be sharing this with everyone else. So in terms of the golden pheasant's actual visual design, this was another one that I struggled with a lot, because I was trying to do a lot of things at once. I am really trying to push like the shapes and the kind of builds of my characters, but like my art style isn't quite there yet. Trying to make all of those pieces work is still a big struggle, but I very much imagine this character to be the most fashion forward out of all of them, because obviously she's very artistically obsessed. She's very visually driven, and she is a lover of nice things, so obviously she would want to wear a lot of nice things on her body. So for garment inspiration for this character, I pulled from a lot of like historical items, a lot of things inspired by vintage dress, as well as specifically from the Victorian period. Like I did with a lot of the other characters, I tried to break the bird down into color blocked sections and translate those into specific garments that she would be wearing, and I think I was kind of halfway successful at this, but it did sort of fall apart in terms of the overall scope. I think a solid idea is there, but it would just take a good bit of revision to get it properly working. But I kind of tried to translate the little stripy, layered, feathered pattern bits around the bird's neck into some furs and shawls. I tried to translate the red belly of the bird into more of a corset style garment, and then also tried to kind of blend that and the tail into a bustle style piece and fan out in the back into all of the long tail feathers. I really wanted to give this character pants because of practicality and mobility, but to also highlight the longer proportional legs of this bird. A lot of the other birds that I've covered had like very small legs that they could kind of like tuck up underneath them, but the legs just stood out to me, so I wanted to try giving her some leg armor that kind of incorporated the foot shape of the bird a little bit. In the end, I do think it comes off across way too armor forward. I think that maybe I could try a different style to make it look a little bit more bird leg adjacent, because right now it just feels a little out of place, throwing off the look just a bit. Thankfully, this time around, we do have a bird that has a bit of a hair moment, but I didn't end up using it as hair this time. Instead, I thought that it would be a great decoration on the top of a hat, because once again, in this world, if you're a seasoned pirate, you've got to have a nice hat. So I gave her a nice little hat with a big plume of feathers across the top of it, and instead gave her like a little vintage inspired red curly bob haircut. I wanted to make this character more middle-aged to show the experience in the pirate world, and because obviously that makes sense, so I think overall having some vintage styling fits that nicely. Finally, for accessories, I gave her a little golden pheasant brooch that kind of fastens her furs together. I gave her a little smoking pipe because it definitely fits the vibe. And finally, for weapons, you don't see it super well, but I did give her a whip on one of her hips just because, I don't know, it just seems like the kind of item that this character would have. But more importantly, I gave her a little cane sword because that's just like definitely the kind of weapon that someone would have who's very concerned about having a put together outfit. Your sword has got to match the outfit, and I also like the concealed nature of it. It's very refined. Overall, I think the design has promise. I think it definitely fits her personality, but if I were to redo it, I already have some ideas of how I would go about doing that, so maybe at some point I'll sketch that up and maybe have like an alt outfit for her or something. If I do, I'll post it on my community tab. Hello, and welcome to the end of the video. I'm sorry, I got a little carried away again with this. If you're still awake by the end of this, leave a bird in the comments. And if you're not still awake, then I probably did my job of being your background noise to help you fall asleep. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the designs that I came up with this week. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings, even though they were very, very long. I've been going through such a weird art block lately where I get ideas for character designs, but like very inconsistently. I'm kind of 50-50 on what I like whenever it comes to the stuff that I do, so some of the designs in this video are hit or miss, but in a way where I'm like, I still like them, I see that they have potential, I'm just still like crawling my way towards having the artistic ability to depict them the way I want. You guys know I'm working on things right now. I'm working on a skill tree level up at the moment, so bear with me as I'm a little too harsh on my own work. Even though I was teetering on the edge of my comfort zone with the designs that I was working on, I was very much in my comfort zone with the stupid lore that I came up with, so if you would like to leave name suggestions, some of the characters still need names, so if you guys have ideas, leave them in the comments. Feel free to leave your fan fictions, add to the lore, go crazy. I'm also looking for suggestions for more character design episodes to do, so leave those as well. But with that, if you made it till the end, thank you so much for watching. It really, really helps. Liking and subscribing and turning on notifications helps too, but as always, the biggest thank you for this video and for every single one of my videos goes to my patrons and especially my executive producers. A huge thank you goes to Lunira, Infinity131, Faith, Mossy Raven, join the Prickly Alpaca Patreon, I'm not saying that name on the internet, AVW Makes, Sarah, Crimson Moon 04, Awendu, Liana, Ermler Jean, Anubix, Breeza, Sony, Brian, Phoenix, Rose Draconi, Ira, Freedom and Gus Gus, Kat, Dodo, Zyle S, Agent.Sketchy, Thea Maia, Lovisa, Eloquent Silence, Megan Penland, Enozine, India Gloom, Hypnos, Katie, Sweet Winter Garden, Gravity Drop, I Hang Out with Cats at Parties, and Bean the Bread.